Good Thursday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock and time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Browns getting ready for their third preseason game against the Eagles after joint practices. None of the ones expected to play. Earlier today, ESPN's Get Up crew on if Deshaun Watson can return to being one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL.
They got to understand, he was the #1 passer in 2020. He completed 70% of his passes, 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, 440-plus yards rushing. I think that's entirely too much if we're asking Deshaun to get back to that guy right now. I think if we can get 75% of that, Cleveland, I think right now would be okay with that.
Oh, my goodness.
What?
He should absolutely get back to that.
He better, right?
$230 million.
That's the point.
100%.
I understand
No.
They gave
First
him
of
a
all,
contract that completely turned the entire NFL upside
and the Browns
down.
are good.
Yeah.
The Browns have a good roster.
He should be that good again?
Heck yeah. The roster that he has in Cleveland is significantly better than the roster, maybe outside of DeAndre Hopkins, but Amari Cooper is no slouch. It is a significantly better overall roster than he had in Houston. I think he should be playing as well. I think he should get reps tonight. There's no question asked. This is what I want to see out of Deshaun. Are you back to being the bouncy, twitchy, sudden athlete that we saw in Houston? Because that was not the case last year in the small body of work. How is his feel for football back? You know, the sense of timing and rhythm and seeing windows open and close. I want to see that. And that's why I think he should be playing in the preseason. I want to see how their offense is going to be a little bit different because I think their offense should change a little bit under Kevin Stefanski. I think it should be a little bit more open, spread out, allowing his talent to be on display.
Well, let's welcome in Quincy Carrier, Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, people are fixating on the numbers. I don't expect him to throw the ball as much as he did in Houston because it's a better roster, because they're not going to be trailing. And if they have 4 wins, there are going to be a lot of changes up and down Browns.
It's funny to me, too, because I don't think Deshaun Watson's best season was 2020. Like, the numbers were great in 2020, and part of that had to do because the defense was so bad for the Houston Texans that year. But if you go back and look at his 2019 season, I mean, you can argue that that's the best Deshaun Watson, and it's not the one with the gaudy numbers. I think we get so fascinated and fixated with passing yards that we forget that that's one of the least important passing stats for a quarterback to have, because it's one of the most inflatable ones. So if he gets back to 5,000 passing yards or leads the league in passing, I could care less. It's more about what you're seeing every day, what he's giving you a chance to do. And did Dan Orlovsky say that Deshaun Watson didn't look athletic last year? Did I hear that correctly?
He said he didn't look twitchy.
What? I mean, like, he didn't look comfortable in the pocket for a couple of games, but, like, he looked athletic in all of those games. That's a new one. I haven't heard that.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. An elite quarterback, you feel like you're going to win the game when he has the ball and the score is tied or you need a score. If he does that, if he gives you the sense we're never out of a game, he's what you wanted. That's what you want in a quarterback.
Yeah, if you don't feel like you have to like the thing with Baker was every time we played Lamar Jackson, every time we played Joe Burrow, every time we played Pat Mahomes, we felt like, hey, we have to compensate for the fact that our quarterback is not on the level of their quarterback. Having an elite quarterback means that you don't have to compensate. And when you're compensating, what do I mean by that? Is like, hey, we can't make any mistakes. We got to play a perfect game. We can't give them anything. We want other teams to feel like that when they play us, right? Like, that's what you want.
Yep. Like you can score, so you can take some chances is basically what you're saying as well. All right, Browns finished 2 days of joint practices with the Eagles. They'll play them in a preseason game tonight. The ones aren't expected to play. A lot of the twos aren't expected to play. Having said that, who do you think came away the winners and the losers from the joint practices?
I think you could say from what we've heard, because again, we're kind of just piecing things together from what we've heard from people when it comes to joint practice, is the defensive line for the Cleveland Browns certainly had a good day. People were saying it's on par with the Eagles defensive line, who, I mean, like, we were raving about it during the Super Bowl run, that they were the Super Bowl appearance run that they had last year. We have to remember the Eagles and the Browns might be the two most talented rosters on earth when it comes to American football. You know, obviously the Eagles are more accomplished, but talent for talent, these are two teams that kind of stack up similarly. So it was great to see that defensive line kind of showed up and made them notice it, right? I think Jason Kelsey said that you're not going to find a better defensive line than what the Cleveland Browns have. Also, another thing, you know, I know we've been panicking every time Jed Wills gets beat by Miles, but Jed didn't really have anything come out about him over the joint practice. And we heard about Miles, you know, violating whatever left tackle that the Eagles were throwing at him during that practice. So kind of like flips what you want to think. And it's like, hey, we've never seen Miles this dominant in camp. And the question is, can a player as good as Myles Garrett be taking a leap? And what does that leap look like? I'm excited to find out.
All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
I'm kind of confused about all these articles going out talking about the Browns' loss to the Eagles. And I was like, it's a joint practice. You're not there for wins or losses. You're just there for a practice. And some days you have good days, some days you have bad days, but you don't win or lose. And I'm kind of confused, and I feel like I'm the only one who thinks that these practices are just what they were. They're practices. It's not a game. It's not a serious game. You know, Thursday is a game, but practice, you can't win or lose a practice. So I'm just want everybody to understand that this was only a practice. It wasn't a game. So all the articles going out explaining why this was the best thing, that they lost the practice and stuff like that. You don't lose a practice. Period, point blank. You don't lose a practice.
As always, appreciate the voicemails. The point is, Quincy, we're not going to see the ones against the ones. So that's why you see. And the other thing that I will say, in these joint practices, they don't allow you to, you've seen no video come out because they don't allow you to shoot it. So the offensive coordinators and the defensive coordinators are willing to do a little bit more because nobody's going to see what they're doing. So that's why people are talking, why the beat reporters are talking about the wins and losses. It doesn't matter in week 3 of training camp, but it does give you an idea of where you stand. And if you're competing with the Eagles, you're in pretty good standing.
I would say I kind of feel similar to the voicemail caller on this one, because I think what happens when we want to call a practice a win or loss, we start looking at it with that mindset, and that's not what a practice is for. What a good practice is ultimately is just both sides of the ball making plays. Like, that's just what you want to see. You want to see some defense make plays. You want to see the offense make plays. Think about back to when you played sports, or if you were playing sports, if you were at home. What would be a good practice for your team? Like, you would feel good if you dominated practice, but usually when your coach is really happy about practice, when things are going back and forth and nobody's really dominating on one side. So that's really what practice is about. You know, I think sometimes, since we have nothing, like football is such a log sport, we really don't have anything concrete to fixate on, like the games during the regular season, during the off season. We kind of fixate on practice and try to make practice feel like the games from our standpoint, but it isn't necessarily the most accurate way to look at it. And I think what the Browns got out of that joint practice was, hey, you know, your defensive line is going to hold up. Offensive line got into some trouble with the Eagles' offensive line, with defensive line, and Deshaun, you know, has to get comfortable playing in there with the pass rush again. It'll be interesting to see if they let him play in that last preseason game just to get him comfortable.
All right, before we go to break, Dorian Thompson-Robinson will get the start tonight. Do you think, and I know you've addressed this on your show, you think he should replace Josh Dobbs as the backup? I will remind everybody, last year everybody was talking about Josh Dobbs. Should he replace Jacoby Brissett because he played so well in preseason?
I think the big difference, though, is there's not much of a difference between Josh Dobbs and DTR. And what I mean by that is there's not a big experience gap. Like, when it was Jacoby Brissett, Josh Dobbs, we were comparing what we were seeing in the preseason versus like 4 or 5 years of starts from Jacoby Brissett. Like, that's a known quantity. We know what you're getting out of Jacoby. You know what to expect. You know what to build out of him. With Josh Dobbs and DTR, both of these guys are relative unknowns. I think Josh Dobbs just got his first full game as a quarterback in the NFL last season. right? He's been in the league for like 5-6 years. He's played maybe 7 quarters of football in that time. So there's not this giant experience gap. And honestly, you have no idea what you're getting out of Josh Dobbs if you have to throw him in a real NFL game. The same way you don't know what you're getting from DTR. And at this point, since that's not a big factor, I would say whatever happens in the preseason probably should dictate what happens with the backup quarterback position, because I would feel more comfortable with DTR. Maybe not if he had to come in during the middle of a game, but let's say if Deshaun had to miss a week, if we need to start somebody and had a week to prepare, I would feel more comfortable with DTR in the game based on what we've seen. And it's not just because he's looked good in the preseason, it's how he's looked good in the preseason.
I understand what you're saying. The only thing, everything's a little bit faster and a little bit more complicated. And I know Dobbs hasn't had a lot of game action. I could see where if they made the case they feel more comfortable with Dobbs, I would understand it. If they feel more comfortable with DTR, I'm good either way. I guess what I'm saying is, whichever way the coaching staff goes, I'd be fine with.
Yeah, it's just there's not enough experience there for us to feel like we're missing out on anything if Josh Dobbs is not the backup, or if he is, because again, we have no idea what both of these guys are going to be in a real NFL game. We can only project. And I can understand why somebody would be like, hey, if we got to project, why not put the young guy in at the backup position?
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, this is Keith calling from Columbus. Go Dog Pound. So I'm hearing the issues we're having in the red zone. My question to you is, we have David Njoku. We now have Tillman, meaning we have some height. What I do notice is they tend to run a lot down by the red zone and not use that back pylon and throw those 50-50 balls. And then the other tight end, Atkins. How hard is it to split them out and let them go get it? Let Njoku use that athletic ability that he has and throw the 50-50 ball. I think that would help solve a lot of problems. And then you can run everything else up underneath. Just want to know what you guys think about it. Go Dog Pound. Woo.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, I would expect that is something that you will see in the regular. You're certainly not going to see it in the preseason. You're not going to show much.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're not going to show any trick plays or anything like that, but like a basic fade to the back pylon, that is something I would like to practice in the preseason because it's not that much different, right? It's just one-on-one football at that point. And the thing where I think the caller has a point is we've never seen Kevin be aggressive about attacking that back pylon with his play calling in the red zone, and that's been one of my criticisms. It drove me crazy with Odell Beckham when they had him here and refused to attack that back pylon.
Baker Mayfield, Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We have to figure out, is it the quarterback? Is it Kevin, right? Because even when Deshaun was in there last year, when they did need to go into the red zone spots, they attacked that front pylon still, right? The DPJ drop, the David Njoku drop, middle of the end zone, still those same landmarks in the red zone. Again, they changed the offense. Maybe they're going to change that approach in the regular season, but something like attacking the back pylon, I think that's something that you can show in preseason. Most teams are going to expect that you're going to do that, especially when you have a big player like David. Now, if the plan is like, we're going to split David all the way out at wide, put him out at the X, and then have him run a run-on-run route with the corner, yeah, you wouldn't show that in the preseason. If those are tricks that they have, if that's a package that they have in there, you're not going to see that. But like Cedric Tillman at the X running a fade, to the back pylon, that's basic football. Everybody runs that play.
Well, we know we haven't seen that the last couple of years. So, but again, don't get too carried away with what you see in the red zone and tell Cincinnati. Then if you don't like what you see, then we can go crazy. All right, this is from Joy Taylor on if the Browns should be worried about Deshaun Watson after the Eagles joint practices. FS1's speak.
I don't want to hear anything bad about Deshaun Watson's play at all. Like, this is a man that's being paid $230 million guaranteed. To put that in perspective, Lamar Jackson is making $135 million guaranteed in his contract. Deshaun Watson is getting $230. So it's almost a $100 million difference. So when we're talking about pressure and who's been paid and when it matters, this is where it starts. And don't talk to me about how much to make per year. What's the most important thing in a contract, Shady?
Guaranteed.
Thank you. Guaranteed money. You did a lot of different things to get this man here, and there are expectations this year from Deshaun Watson and the Browns. We haven't talked about the Browns a lot because they've had a quiet offseason, which is generally a good thing for a team who's trying to come in and make some noise during the regular season. He's had a full offseason with this team. By the way, a team talented enough to go to the playoffs and win a playoff game with Baker Mayfield. So, yeah, this is a little concerning. This is high stakes for the Browns this year. And we're not maybe talking about them as much through this offseason as we will during the regular season. But if things start to look bad for them because of Deshaun Watson's play, who had career lows and everything last year, but we all agreed, no, it's not reasonable to expect him, having not played football for that long, to come in and have a good performance. It would have been shocking to everyone, I think. So we let you get a pass on that. Now it's crunch time. This is concerning.
And Quincy, in order to put it in proper perspective, Lamar's guarantee is 185. 135 was guaranteed at signing. I mean, he is guaranteed 185 million. You're only off by 50 million. The other thing is, it was joint practices, and Nick Chubb wasn't in a lot of the red zone things. Again, they're not showing anything.
Two things. One, when a quarterback you don't like throws an interception, boy, oh boy, do we not want to investigate it, right? We just don't ever want to investigate that. Right? That's the universal truth about this. Two, was there a video feed to this practice that I missed? Like, how does everybody reacted to this practice? Like, nobody saw this practice, but like 30 people, not with the Browns or the Eagles, saw this practice. And everybody has these hot takes about this practice that nobody saw. Again, it's vague enough to where whatever agenda you want to be on, you can push it, right? If you felt like Deshaun, or you want to say that Deshaun looks great, you can push that. If you want to say that Deshaun looked terrible, you can push that. Who's going to check you? There's no video on this whole thing. So, people are just kind of, Joy's running wild with that one. And two, why do we care what Deshaun Watson's guarantee is? We ain't paying it. This is not funded by the taxpayers. This was not a bill passed in Washington. We have nothing to do with the money that he got. We don't do this with Aaron Rodgers. We not doing this with Pat Mahomes. We not up here wondering what Joe Burrow's guarantee gonna be. We're not. What does anybody know what Jalen Hurts' guarantee is? Because he threw 3 interceptions in practice according to these stats. Nobody cares, right? We're not bringing up the guaranteed money. We act like we paying this money. We not paying this money. This is not our responsibility. Why are we still? If the contract was signed 2 years ago, dog, there's bigger contracts now, like 5 of them. Why are we still talking about Deshaun Watson's money? Like we gotta pay it. This is not student debt, dog. Like, we don't gotta pay this. This is not your responsibility. We don't have to pay the load of Deshaun Watson's debt. That's Jimmy Haslam. And he already paid it. He cool on it. Why you mad?
Well, the other thing is, if you're going to make the point about guaranteed money, at least be correct about it. I mean, it's not 135, it's 185. Guaranteed is 185.
It's like, what money matters? The money that you get if you stay in the contract, because there's a lot of quarterbacks who had more money than that than Deshaun Watson. When does money actually matter, Dave? Like when does it actually matter? And the only time it matters is when you don't like the guy who got the money. Like, that's really it. If you don't like the guy who got the money, you're going to find reasons to act like that money is too much. People who don't like Pat Mahomes are like, oh, well, can you actually win around him? And then he won the Super Bowl. Like, can you win again around him? It's only brought up when you trying to hate there's only one reason to bring up the money. It is only when you try to hate, because it got nothing to do with us. We don't pay it. We don't subsidize it. It don't matter to us. You only bring it up. Well, not you, Dave. You're not a hater, but people only bring this up when it's time to, be a little disingenuous, because it doesn't matter. Why do we care so much?
All right, on to a different topic. What starter should we be excited about? Again, I know we've addressed this on your show as well. Who are you excited about with the Browns?
Hey, Dave, you know that they only return one starter for the defensive line?
That is a good thing. It's Myles Garrett.
And that's what I'm excited about. They only are returning one Myles Garrett, and everybody else is new. You might have a whole rotation, right? We're talking about Miles, Obo, Zadarius. You can roll in Isaiah McGuire, who looked good during joint practice, and then you can get that defensive line rotation. Shelby, Dalvin Tomlinson, Maurice Hurst, maybe, if he makes the team, and Siaki Ika, and have 7 new defensive linemen. And boy, oh boy, that's what I'm excited about. I'm so excited about that, to see an NFL defensive line next to Myles Garrett this year, because last year I had to watch him play against the first team play with the first team all XFL, and it didn't look good. It looked terrible, but Myles still got 16 of them sacks. So that's what I'm most excited about, is that nobody other than Myles Garrett returned.
Jim Schwartz,
from that defensive line.
Jim Schwartz likes the baseball analogies. He's got a whole new staff out there ready to go.
He cleared it out. He's like, I'm keeping Cy Young, and we're getting rid of the rest of you jokers. Like, this was LeBron when he came back to Cleveland. Remember when LeBron came back to Cleveland? He was like, we're going to keep Deion for a little bit. We're going to keep Kyrie, and everybody else can get the boot. You, Andrew Wiggins, even though you were just drafted here, the boot. We had Mike Miller, James Jones on this team. Jim Schwartz, LeBron, this defense. And I'm not mad at it, because I think they're going to be a significantly improved unit.
Quincy Carey and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear more about Deshaun Watson and the expectations for this year, plus the ceiling and the floor for the Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage here on Sports4CLE. LaShawn McCoy, former NFL running back, on if he's worried about Deshaun Watson. This again from FS1 Speak.
Don't panic yet. Deshaun Watson, we will see the old Deshaun Watson. Let's not forget the last time he played a full season, he almost had like 5,000 yards. So he is a good player. I mean, he hasn't played much football in the last, 2 years? I mean, that matters. So at practice, it's okay to throw some picks. Now, I feel like people that sit in that seat right there, they don't care about the picks. They don't mind it. But if you throw picks in practice, I understand that. It's camp. That's what it's for. I've been there with Tom Brady threw picks. Yeah. I had some bad games. I've had bad practices. I can name so many players, so it happens. But the one thing about Deshaun Watson is that we know once he gets in his confidence back, gets in the groove, he's going to be the same Deshaun Watson. So I'm not worried about that. I'm worried more if we get into the game and it's like, let's say, game 5. He's looking shaky. That's different. Yeah. But from preseason practice to game 1 to game 2, give me some grace. Let him get his feet wet a little bit, and then we should see.
Quincy, I always find it most interesting to hear former players' reactions because they've been through it.
Yeah, and it's like also back to this whole joint practice thing. I forgot they played a preseason game that Deshaun played there. You remember that game? I feel like that didn't happen. Nobody brought it up. He went 3 for 3, 12 yards, and then ran for 2 first downs. It looked pretty good out there, moved the offense quite well. It didn't get brought up at all. But these interceptions that we don't even know if they happened for sure were most certainly brought up. Yeah, that's what practice is for. Look, Deshaun is a vet too. You got to remember that. He's a dude who's been in the league for a very long time. So his interest isn't going to be what a second-year quarterback's interest is going to be in camp, which is I'm just trying to learn how to do what I'm supposed to do. He's also trying to experiment. Like, hey, can I hit this throw? Can I fit this ball in cover 3 into this seam? You know what I mean? He's kind of experimenting in practice to see what he can get away with so he can have the confidence to make some of those top-level elite plays in a game. All of the elite quarterbacks do this. Peyton Manning used to throw 1 million interceptions in camp because he's always trying to figure out what can I get away with. And those margins when you're at the top of the NFL are razor thin. So, hey, if you're just a little off here, if it doesn't feel right, you're going to throw an interception. So you want to practice those situations in practice. So when you throw them in a game, you can make the play and not cost the team a possession. So, yeah, I think the interceptions, Tom Brady threw them, everybody throws interceptions in camps. It's not really that big of a deal for veteran quarterbacks. Maybe if it's a first or second year quarterback who's just trying to figure out what they're supposed to do with the ball. But Deshaun Watson's been to 3 Pro Bowls. We kind of forget he's been in the league a long time. He's only 27, but he's still been in the league a while. He's doing what veteran quarterbacks do, which is try stuff. I'm pretty sure if we go in a time machine 10 years ago, we'll hear to say Ben's throwing some interceptions in camps and nobody cares because that's what Ben does. He just tries stuff out so he can see what he can get away with in games.
The other thing is different receivers will like the ball in different spots, and that can lead to it too. There's a number of things, but yeah, it's not time to get worried yet. I found this really interesting as well. This win-loss ceiling and floors for all 32 teams is from ESPN.com. For the Browns, ceiling 11-6, floor 6-11. Biggest X factor, the pass rush. Browns have collectively struggled to create sacks, tackles for loss, and turnovers in recent years. Whether Cleveland can reach its ceiling will hinge heavily on whether new coordinator Jim Schwartz and his aggressive style and schemes can turn things around. I think the ceiling's a little low. I would say 11-6 would be a good year. I think the ceiling for them might be 12 or 13 wins if everything goes well and Deshaun plays really, really well.
Yeah, my range would be probably, I think 13 is the max. I'll be very shocked if they get 13 wins, but I also want to be so shocked that I thought it was impossible. And I think the floor for this team is probably 8 wins. I think that's the floor. I mean, like, realistically, they went 7 with all of the disaster that they had last year. They're not going to lose an extra game than they did last year while being a better team on every facet. So I just don't think 6-11 is a proper floor there. And the ceiling, yeah, I think the ceiling should be a little bit higher. This was a team that the basic core of it went, 11-5 with Baker Mayfield playing decently. If Deshaun Watson plays at his best, which is what the ceiling is for, you should definitely win more than 11 games. Maybe since you're in the AFC North, 12 might be the max. If you were in a weaker division, 13 would. But, you know, I think that's where I would be with them.
Yeah, and again, the division is tough without question. All right. Players that you're worried about right now, again, I know you've addressed this on your show. Browns players that you're concerned with.
There are some guys on this team, like, when I say worry, I'm not saying like I'm panicking about them or that I think they're going to stink. I'm just like, hey, I haven't seen everything that I want to see out of you, or there's not enough information out there about how well or not well you're doing that it has me a little bit concerned. One of those players, and honestly, I'm like this with both of the tackle positions because I think they're going to be so much more important, and I worry about Jack Conklin and Jed Wills' ability to adjust for Deshaun for very different reasons. Deshaun is going to require that tackles kind of, instead of being traditional tackles where you just get to your steps and you block, this is going to be more of a basketball defense kind of situation where you're going to have to chop it up and kind of stay even with your edge rusher. And Jed has the feet and athletic ability to do that. I do worry about Jack Conklin in that situation because there were times last year where he had to do that and it looked bad. But he's a good enough right tackle to where you might have some faith. Denzel Ward is somebody who, like, look, some of those issues he's had over the last few years, it's been a concern, right? Like, it's not something that you could just write off by the defensive coordinator not doing right by him because he's Denzel Ward. Like, he should be able to overcome some level of adversity, and the inconsistency that he's given his team, especially last year, you know, it's something to be concerned about until he corrects it. And maybe that had to do something with the injury he sustained in camp early last year. Maybe it doesn't. We'll find out. But those are the guys of the main guys that I would be a little concerned about.
All right, let's flip it over. Who are some players to be hyped about during training camp?
Yeah, we're not hyped enough about Myles Garrett. It seems like every time Myles does something impressive in camp, we find something to be worried about because Myles is doing something impressive instead of being like, man, Myles is really popping up more often than he's not, right? Because that was the complaint last year during camp. We're not seeing enough of Myles. We're not seeing enough plays being made by Myles. Now he's making all the plays in the world, and people are like, well, that's not good for Jed Wills. You know what I mean? Like, we're finding reasons not to be excited about Myles for whatever reason, and I think we really should. One, the help is finally going to be at a level that is appropriate for a player like Myles Garrett that he's never had before in his career. And then he just personally looks like he's playing at a higher level than he's ever played at this point in camp. So I would be super excited about Myles Garrett, and I don't understand why we aren't more excited about this, because one of the best defensive players in football, Dave, looks like he's about to take a leap. Myles Garrett might take a leap. How is that not front page news?
Yeah, and you know what? If you're a quarterback in the AFC North, you should be concerned, because Myles Garrett has been really good against Joe Burrow and pretty good against the other quarterbacks. And imagine if you set him at another level.
Imagine when they can do 3x1s and it like actually scares the offensive line, or like rotations and stuff. They could roll in linebacker blitz. Like, they can do so much now that defensive line next to him is actually competent. Like, they couldn't do all of that basically all they could do last year was say, hey, we just gonna run up in base and just go straight. They were playing preseason defense. Like, that's what they could do with the defense. They couldn't even do stunts and twist after a while because we just weren't coordinated enough with the rest of the guys. And people were getting injured trying to do stunts and twists. So now you have guys who can actually do stunts and twists. You could do two-man games. You could run some pick and rolls. So much more. You see, I'm excited. I don't know why everybody else ain't as excited as me about this, because this is incredible. The difference from last year.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. On the other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Oh, hey guys, Daniel, I love your guys' show. I was just thinking about the new roster. Hopefully Watson does really good. I think we should do Watson, DTR, and then Dobbs. I love all three. We need to get rid of them on. I think Tillman's really good. And I think we need to look at possibly a new linebacker. And then what's going on with Cade? I know kicking, special teams. I think we should bring in some competition, because even though we have Watson, we still need to be able to kick field goals. And we still haven't had any good punt returners since Joshua Cribbs. And then what should we do since Ford is gone too? So I love you guys. What do you guys think? Go Brownies. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, a lot in there. Ford, I like the signing of Wilkins. We really didn't talk about that. Young guy, kind of like we said, a young guy who's had some success, can catch the ball too.
Yeah. I think they're going to be looking all over the place for different running backs. They're going to be scouting kind of the bottom of these rosters, and I think they're going to leave no stone unturned, whether that be on this roster or on other rosters. I think it'll be interesting to see who makes the initial 53 and then the game day 53, right? Because there are going to be some players that make the roster for that 2 weeks before they play that are going to be off of the roster by the time they actually get to kickoff. So that's going to be interesting to see. And I expect some changes probably at running back, maybe along the bottom of the roster at linebacker if they're not happy with what they're seeing. Not at the linebacker position. I think that's in jeopardy. I think that's pretty set, the rotation there. But with special teams, because Dave, the special teams coverage has been a little shaky, and I would expect that's where Bubba's going to want to tinker around with to get a little bit more athleticism, because they seem to keep getting beat going downhill to the left side. Yeah,
the punt return, let's wait and see. Jakeem Grant is working his way back. You don't want to rush him in, and let's see if we see some of him. He's been taking part in drills now. Jakeem Grant was an all-pro kick returner. Darden's been banged up. Those are the two guys that I think come to mind with who they're looking at. But Darden has been hurt. He was hurt at the Greenbrier and hadn't been able to get back on the field, Jalen Darden.
Yeah, and I would be worried more so about the defensive side of the special teams, right? Because you've had the 2 long punt returns against the Jets. You had another long punt return or kick return against the Washington football team or the Commanders now. So it's a little bit of a concern that it's happened both games you've gotten out there. And I think that has to do with not being happy with what you're getting special teams wise out the bottom of the roster there. So I think that's where you would expect some changes just for defensive special teams purpose.
All right, this is a tweet from Warren Sharp. Percentage of quarterback pressures that turn into sacks 2022, minimum of 200 dropbacks. So Mahomes had the least at 10.8, then Goff 12.3, Flacco 13.0, Jacoby Brissett 17.5. Deshaun Watson is down at 34th, 20.8, and Baker Mayfield was worst at 30.8. 200 dropbacks in only 6 games. So they threw the ball quite a bit. We've talked about this before, Quincy. Sacks are something that kind of happen with Watson.
Yeah, and this is something in his game that he has to fix, right? Because a lot of the pressures he gets, a lot of the sacks he gets, we kind of have blamed him on other things. It seems to be consistent with Deshaun Watson. And if you look at quarterback sack numbers, they always seem to be more consistent with the quarterback than they are with the offensive line unit. Baker Mayfield, similar sack percentage throughout every one of his stays that he had in Cleveland. And part of that is because how you control yourself in the pocket, how you play is going to leave you more susceptible. Now, Baker tried to play like Deshaun. He was not the athlete that Deshaun was, so it didn't have the benefits that it has with Deshaun. So part of the sacks you're going to get and the pressure that you're going to get, because he kind of creates it, is fine because you're willing to deal with the positive that it creates. But I do think that there is a little bit there that he can kind of taper in on, lock in on to get a little bit better, right? Especially when it comes to his 5 and his 7-step drops out of shotgun. He always tends to get way deeper than he needs to get. And because of that, he gets sacked more often because he just blows his tackles deaf. And that's something that I would love to see him fix. And from what I saw in the preseason, it did look a little bit better than it did during the regular season last year. Now, that won't mean anything if it doesn't get fixed for week 1 this year, but that's something that Deshaun could work on to get a little bit better. And that's what would make, the passing yards, Dave, that's what it is. But if he gets better at that kind of stuff, if he takes way less sacks, especially in the pocket, not in scramble situations, I don't care if he takes sacks in scramble situations, but in the pocket, if he takes less pocket sacks, then that's going to be the stuff that gets him not just past 2019 or 2020, whichever version you think is the best of him, but into the elite category, because then you're not falling behind the sticks as much. Then you're winning more games because you're scoring more points.
All right, before I let you go, what do you think of the safety room with the Browns? And again, I know we've addressed this in your show.
It's a pretty safe room. You know what I mean? I like it. It seems like the pieces are in the right spot. Look, I don't think anybody's going to become a star out of this safety room, but that's fine. As long as nobody's becoming an anti-hero or an anti-star, right? Where we are learning a safety's name because we hate him. And we've done this for the last 3-4 years, right, in Cleveland. So as long as we're not cussing out Juan Thornhill in November because he's blowing a coverage or something like that, then that's fine. I just want the safety room to be safe. It looks like, hey, we have a true free safety to play free safety. We have Grant and Ronnie able to kind of rotate and handle some of that box stuff that the safety does there, and I think you'll be fine there. Maybe a star develops in Grant Delpit, maybe it doesn't. I'm willing to just take that for what it is as long as we're safe at safety, and I think we are.
What do you think of what you've seen from Ronnie Hickman? I mean, it's a rookie undrafted free agent. Way to open some eyes to get a couple of picks like he did.
Raw talent, a really raw talent. Sometimes you can see him struggle with his techniques when he has to go one-on-one with the tight end or especially like in coverage. But he has some elite traits. I would say his speed is pretty impressive. If you look at both the plays he made those interceptions, you'll notice that all it took was a little tap by the defensive end to affect that ball just a little bit, and Ronnie Hickman had the speed and the quickness to break in on that ball and get those interceptions. So that's what you see out of him. He has the raw talent that you can mold into a true free safety. And I don't think we had somebody that was on the back end of this roster that was more of a true free safety mode. He's really a great enough athlete at the NFL level to be molded into that. Maybe he came out a year too early, or maybe he just didn't get to play enough at Ohio State. Some of his technique is just a little bit sloppy, but if you can mold him, he's a perfect candidate to put on that practice squad, develop for a year, maybe 2 years, and then maybe he's in an opportunity to kind of take over next year as a safety.
Quincy Carrier, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
Thank you, Dave. You have a great day.
Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage, always entertaining, always great stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com. Straight ahead, we continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Emmanuel Acho on if he's worried about Deshaun Watson. This again from FS1 Speak.
I'm worried, 2-5. I'm worried until he gives me a reason not to worry. Because to Joy's point, last year he didn't look great, but he wasn't supposed to look great. That's fine. Yeah. But eventually you got to get back to looking great. Yeah. And I don't necessarily want to hear of, and I am a believer in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Cool, congratulations. But you were a fifth-round pick, I believe. So I only want to hear about Deshaun Watson and good things on the football field from Deshaun Watson. So it's not even the 3 interceptions at camp that worry me as much as I just want to hear glowing reports. Deshaun Watson had 8 touchdown passes at camp. Like, that's all I want to hear, only because I am worried. It's been a long time. Was it the 2020 season, maybe the 21 season, when we saw Deshaun Watson playing good football? And even that year, he led the league in passing yards, maybe 2021. I'm not looking at it off top. I'm just going off the top of my head. Even in that year, 2020, his team was 4-12. Yeah. So we didn't see it amount to much. So, Shady, I want to see good ball from Deshaun. I just want to see it.
With that, let's welcome in Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com. And Jacob, until you are game planning, which is the regular season. Anything else, isn't anything to get terribly upset about. If he's doing well, great. If he's not doing well, he needs to do better.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I mean, remember the 0-16 campaign? The Browns started that preseason 4-0. So it really doesn't matter so much what's happening here in terms of wins and losses or reports out of camp. I mean, like you said, they're not game planning for joint practices. They're going out there, they're running plays, they're trying to see if this play works or that play works, and they're running same plays over and over that they wouldn't do so that they can just kind of see all the scenarios that could play out come the regular season. And it's not like everybody's suddenly gravitated towards this one report that there were some struggles against Philadelphia and thrown out everything else we've seen. And the most important thing we saw was last week in an actual on the field game type situation. And the one time he's played in a real game, they marched right down the field. I'm not worried right now. And just remember, practice is practice. And we thought they were really good or really bad because of camp, and it went a total different direction.
Yeah. And you know, the other thing, and Quincy pointed it out earlier, they're working on things. So he's trying to figure out, can I throw a back shoulder? Can I throw this on this route? Can I throw this up in the air? Can I, you know, all these things are things he's working on against a different defense than his own. So and there's no video of this. So we don't know what the interceptions look like because they don't let you shoot them. So there are things that they are working on. It's not great, but I wouldn't go crazy about it as well. Let's turn our attention running back room. What are your thoughts with it?
Yeah, so it's a really hard room to kind of evaluate, I think, because of the Jerome Ford situation and trying to figure out when he's going to be back, because I'm a big Jerome Ford believer. So I really like him and Chubb as the 1-2 punch there. Demetric Felton, I feel like he's come out of nowhere again, where he kind of was becoming a forgotten man, and then all of a sudden he's getting a good look in the first 2 preseason games. He looks dynamic and explosive in the open field, and I'll tell you, I said this on my podcast earlier this week, he's not looking too bad fielding punts all of a sudden. Like, he used to stress me out when he would get back there, and I figured he was going to muff everything, but he's been looking really good with that as well. And I think if he continues these next couple of weeks, I still lean towards another veteran if Ford's going to miss regular season time. But I think they could get by with Demetric Felton and maybe a guy like Hassan Hall or John Kelly as an emergency if they need to go without Ford for a couple of weeks. So while it's not great, I don't think it's like awful by any stretch of the imagination.
So what are your thoughts about Wilkins? I'm intrigued by Jordan Wilkins. I remember him with the Colts. I paid attention. He's a guy that can catch the ball. I'm curious. I would assume he's going to get some time in this game against the Eagles. And I think he could kind of vault his way into, well, maybe he is an option.
Yeah, especially with those special teams snaps and history that he has had back there. Because what you're talking about is you're looking for kind of a third down pass catcher back to be that third guy on the roster behind Ford or Felton or whoever's at number 2 based on injury. And those guys are going to play special team snaps. And he has a lot of experience of doing it at a high level on the special teams. He has kind of a limited carry production over his career, but he still averages 4.5 yards a carry in his career, so it's not bad there. He has very reliable hands out of the backfield. He's definitely somebody, I didn't include him in my players to watch this week, but he's definitely somebody you should watch this week and next week who could really find a way to just sneak on that roster if Ford misses regular season time.
You know, I didn't connect the dots until you mentioned special teams. Bubba Ventrone was with the Colts, so keep an eye on special teams with him as well. Again, what do you think about Jakeem Grant? If he's healthy, he solves a lot of your problems with punt return. He was an All-Pro.
Yeah, for sure. What's really interesting, I was listening to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast earlier this week after the first day of joint practices with the Eagles, and Dan Lobby said he's getting the vast majority of return snaps, and it's not even close. So they're really, really ramping him up in practice and really giving him more and more, and he looks good. And I kind of talked about this on Twitter a little while ago, that that speed that they're missing with Marquise Goodwin, they don't really have a plan that is clear right now to me if he misses regular season time. And if he misses time, I always thought, Jalen Darden would be there. Well, Jalen Darden's been out for a while. So who can run and stretch the field and really help open it up outside of Elijah Moore and potentially do return things? And the only person I can think of to fill that role, the way they sit right now, is Jakeem Grant. They haven't gone out and got a speedster. And maybe it's because all along they thought that this guy looks healthy and he's going to prove me wrong. I didn't think he'd make the roster, but that path is materializing, and it's becoming really realistic right now.
And the other thing is, with a veteran, you don't put him out there too early. You don't put him out there for a ton of non-significant preseason time, so that they'll be very judicious with how they use him if that is indeed their plan. What do you think about the linebacker position? Do you think they should pursue another one after Jacob Phillips's injury? And I know this is from your mailbag with Browns Wire.
Yeah, I think Mahmoud Diabate is the guy that you need to watch right now, and I think it kind of goes around him because Jordan Kanasic, I think he'll end up making the roster because he's a pretty good special teams player, and they're going to want to give Bubba Ventrone players, they're going to keep guys specifically for special teams so that it's no longer a burden on the rest of the team where they're kind of dragging them down. So I think he's been playing really well. I thought maybe they would bring him in as more of a stand-up pass rusher in that wide nine, but they've really been his play as an off-ball linebacker last week. He had a 90 coverage grade last week against the Eagles. And so I think that he is the answer to filling Jacob Phillips's role. If he can continue to play like this, I think they'll be just fine with keeping him over bringing someone else in. And I think it's also telling they haven't brought someone else in. And I think that they like the young guys in there. If Anthony Walker and Taki are healthy to go with JOK, those are the top three that they're going to play. And I think Tony Fields and Diabate have really put themselves in a spot to be good depth pieces at off-ball linebacker.
Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. Back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, some players to watch against the Eagles. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, I got two questions or suggestions for the Browns. When are they going to get Phil Dawson over here to help Cade York? And when are they going to put Jim Brown's initials and or his number on the jerseys to honor him? Thanks, and go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jacob, they had Phil Dawson had talked and done that with Cade York last year. I don't think it's anything that Cade York's got to figure it out and kind of get out of his own way, if you will. And anything the Browns do to honor Jim Brown that is a big statement, I'm all for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with Cade York, it's all in his head right now. There's something about the way that he is kind of striking the ball at the last minute that forces it to just push right, because off of his foot just about every time, it seems like he's striking it correctly and it's going down the middle. And then kind of as it peaks up, it just pushes right. And I'm not really sure if that's something that you can, if it's a coaching thing. It feels like to me it's just in his head. As soon as he gets on the field and it's an actual game, he just can't figure it out, because he's making every kick in camp from everything I've seen. He made all of his kicks in the joint practice with the Eagles. And then, he gets out there on the field. We'll see what happens tonight. But I think for him, it's up in his head. And when it comes to Jim Brown, I think you're absolutely going to see something week one. I don't see any situation where you can't. I heard today that the NFL wasn't in favor of him, something with him being at the midfield logo, which is kind of weird. So that's why that was not an option. But I would think a patch and probably a decal on the helmet, because I agree with you. Nothing's enough to honor Jim Brown. Just everything you feel is comfortable. Let's do it.
Yeah, I didn't hear that about the league. I would have put the 32 on the orange helmet and done that. But what are your thoughts? We talked a little bit about it. Cade York, competition. I don't know that helps. I don't think they're ready to move on from him. So if you're bringing in a veteran, why are you doing it?
Yeah, I had that question, like, is the lack of competition the reason he's struggling? And I don't think so. That doesn't seem to make a ton of sense to me. I get the point, like, make him think there's a consequence to playing poorly, that he could actually get benched. So I understand that aspect of it. But honestly, it feels like it's in his head right now. Maybe bringing competition might not be a good thing. It might be the absolute wrong thing to do. And I know I said it last week that we should do it, but maybe, I mean, there's a reason they continue to say no. And I will admit, this is the time to let him try to figure it out. You have 2 more games. Run him out there as often as you can in those games. Let him get those in-game kicks. See what happens. He's just got too much leg talent for them to completely, cut ties and move on. And I think they see it how they won week 1 last year and think, hey man, if we can continuously get a guy like this to be a difference maker like Justin Tucker is for the Ravens, they're going to try everything and give him every shot they can. But if it costs a game early on, I think you'll see him move on at that time.
Yeah, you cannot lose games because of your field goal kicker when you have the expectations that the Browns do. You can't. If you're expecting 3 points, you need the 3 points. 3 players to watch in today's preseason game. I know you wrote an article about it. You went with Luke Whippler, rookie center, Austin Watkins, wide receiver Cedric Tillman. Take us through those and what your thoughts are with them.
Hey, Luke Whippler, not a pressure allowed in the first 2 preseason games that he's played in. They even moved him for about, I think it was 9 snaps he played last week at left guard. I was very much in the reason that he fell. I thought a lot of it had to do with his size kind of limits him to being a center only. So the fact that he's starting to get guard reps, I think is significant for him. He held his own pretty well at left guard last week. Like I said, just a handful of snaps, 9 snaps. But when you got a rookie center in a situation where your center in front of you, the average of Ethan Posick's career has not been good. What if last year was an anomaly? Well, then you need someone like Luke Whippler to be ready, because they have an out in Posick's contract after this. But if he can play both positions, I think he easily makes this roster, and I think it's a big deal. And so I'm going to watch him, check how that's going. Austin Watkins, man, he just keeps making plays. Every time you open Twitter during practice, you're seeing him doing some kind of one-handed grab or something like that. He's not like a freak level athlete, but he understands how to get open, how to catch the football, reliably has good size, and they're going to have a hard time keeping Austin Watkins off this 53-man roster if he continues to play like that. And then looking at Cedric Tillman, I just like watching that guy play football, man. Like, he is bigger than all the other wide receivers in the corners, and we just don't see that a lot in Cleveland. And it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, he's been fun to watch. I think he'll continue to be fun to watch, and you got the Dorian Thompson-Robinson connection. Let's watch some more.
The Watkins thing with Austin Watkins, I was hoping they might be able to sneak him through, get him on the practice squad. I think he has probably played well enough in his time with the USFL and in preseason that if they try to do that, one of the other teams that is wide receiver needy might put him at the back end of their 53.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried too. I kind of wrote that in the article today about the players to watch. I was like, I just don't see, like, maybe you could sneak him on there, but man, he's just made too many plays, and he's got such a nice combination of size, physicality, and athleticism, and he's just a reliable guy. He reminds you of a bigger Jarvis Landry, kind of in his play style, similar to like a bigger David Bell as well. And so I just don't see a way he makes it to the practice squad. Maybe you get lucky. I don't know. But I think he deserves to be on the 53-man roster somewhere. And so if he continues to play that way and it's not in Cleveland, then, I'll still be happy for the guy and root for him moving forward.
Jacob Roach, BrownsWire.com. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jacob.
Thanks, Dave. Always a pleasure.
Jacob Roach, make sure you check him out. Good stuff. BrownsWire.com. Always insightful. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.